Welcome to UFC 326 fight weekend. I hope you guys are excited as I am. I'm going to be breaking down every single fight, starting with the early prelims, ending with the main event, showing you guys every single fighter's notes, style, and then my favorite bets from each fight. Let's get into it. Starting us off with the first fight, Luke Fernandez versus Rodolfo Bellato. Some notes on Luke Fernandez. He was 5-0 in UCFC. He became a champion over there, goes on the Contender Series, gets a 15-second KO, making his UFC debut this weekend. All but one of his wins come by knockout. I feel like that kind of bleeds into his style. He's a powerful striker that wants to bring the fight to you the second the fight begins. He's not afraid to implement grappling. He'll rip some nasty ground and pound shots. He will use cage control at times, but my biggest concern with him is he's very untested, and he's not a very big guy for the light heavyweight division. His opponent, Rodolfo Bellato, he lost to Vitor Petrino on the Dana White Contender Series, goes back to the regional scene, becomes a champion in LFA, then gets back on the Contender Series, gets a W. Since joining the UFC, he's won, 1-1 with a win, loss, draw, and a no contest. His one win wasn't very impressive, but the style of Bellato, he showed good durability in the past. He's just way too hittable. And like I said, he's plotty, sloppy, wants to pressure constantly, but then never lands anything super devastating. And that's really it out of Bellato. My prediction with this fight, I think Luke Fernandez gets it done by round one knockout. Last week, I was hesitant to pick the powerful uh, Dana White Contender Series alum making their debut in Damian Pinas. I'm not making that mistake this week. I think Fernandez is able to get it done. Originally, when I was watching, I was thinking, okay, well, if Bellato can kind of weather the storm early, then maybe he'll be able to find a win in the later rounds. But even if he makes it to the later rounds, I don't think he's got he's just too hittable. And Luke Fernandez has seen second rounds before, and he has that one decision. So I think Fernandez gets it done. His money line is decent value. Him by KO is probably the better value if you do think he's going to get it done. And the fight to end in round one also is pretty good value at plus 135. Next up, we got Jung Young Lee versus Gaston Bolaños. This was supposed to be Juseng Yu. I was pretty pumped about that. If you guys actually, if you're on my Snapchat story, the first person I posted about was Juseng Yu, and he ends up getting injured, pulling out of this fight. But Jong Eun Lee steps in. Some notes on him: he was a good regional scene fighter in Road FC, became a champion over there, goes on the road to the UFC, goes 2-0 there, earns a contract. Since joining the UFC, he's 2-2. He's been on a two-fight losing streak, but both of his opponents were both pretty good. There weren't any bad losses in there. Both of his opponents, they were tough fights, and they were both good opponents. His style, he's a big and crisp fighter. He likes to pour it on with volume, but he struggles with accuracy. He's a well-rounded guy. He'll rip the body well, but he engages in scraps. Bros only in bangers. Watch any of these guys' fights. He comes to throw down. Super entertaining guy. Every single one of his fights has been really entertaining to watch. His opponent, Gaston Bolaños, he has a Muay Thai background before transitioning to MMA. Joined Bellator, goes 6-3. Now he's in the UFC, 2-2 so far. Both of his wins over lower level guys. His style, he's got fairly weak takedown defense and submission defense. He wants to keep the fight standing. He's a Muay Thai guy. He's going to push a lower pace, pick his shots well, throws nasty, damaging low kicks. I would definitely say that's his strength. My prediction for the fight, I've got Jung Young Lee getting it done by unanimous decision. I just think he mixes it up well and overwhelms him with the volume. He's not going to let Bolaños pick his shots and outpoint him. I think Jung Young Lee really pours it on over the course of 3 rounds. I think the fight to go over 1.5 rounds at minus 180 is good value, but neither of these guys are super elite finishers by any means. And Lee over on significant strikes, I think, is also something that would have good value because, like I said, this fight's going to go longer, and Lee has great volume. So I think he's going to land good shots over the course of 3 rounds. And then the money line at minus 280, I think, is also good value. Moving on throughout the card, Rafael Tobias versus Dairo Nurgaje. Rafael Tobias, notes on him. He's a shoot box fighter. He went 13-1 on the regional scene. Goes on the Dana White Contender Series, gets a submission win, 5 knockouts, 6 submissions, 3 decisions. So he's got a diverse path to victory, and he's a fairly experienced fighter, which is pretty rare for somebody making his UFC debut. His style, he's a good BJJ grappler. He'll mix up his entries well, find the submissions. His striking's been the only thing that has needed to improve, but I think it has. He'll throw these big, wide, looping shots, and he's always had good power, but it's just been the accuracy and, like I said, the big looping shots that seem to kind of hold him back. But it's improved from the beginning to his more recent stuff. His opponent, Dyer Nurgaje, he went 10-0 on the regional scene, became a champion in Eagle FC, which is Khabib's regional scene promotion. Goes on the Contender Series, round 1 KO. Since then, he's been 0-2 in the UFC. Pretty disappointing. He's got submitted in both of his last two. His style, he's a technical striker. He's got finishing power in his hands and decent athleticism, despite, I mean, it's not like he's a blob or anything, but he definitely doesn't have a build that screams super athlete, but he is a fairly good athlete, but he's also very hittable. He's got a low fight IQ and very weak defensive grappling, as he's shown. He got submitted in his first debut fight and then turns around in a second fight and almost loses to the exact same submission. It was right there. He was able to get out of it, but then he sunk himself right into another submission. My prediction for this fight, uh, I've got Tobias getting it done by round 1 submission. I have no reason to believe that Nurkajai is any good. And I think it's going to go the exact same way that his last two fights have gone. We've got a strong grappler in Tobias making his debut, and somebody who's shown that he clearly cannot defend takedowns or the submission. So I think Tobias is able to take him down and find it. I think his money line at minus 200 makes sense, and the fight under 1.5 total rounds. Both of these guys have pretty relatively high finishing rates, and like I said, I think if Nurgaje is able to find a win, it's by early knockout. So I think the value in under 1.5 at minus 115 makes sense. But yeah, I'm going to go with Tobias on this one. All right, moving on throughout the card, we've got Sumo Derje versus Jesus Aguilar. Sumo Derje, some notes on him. He went 13-3 on the regional scene in WLF. He was just piling up KO finishes. Since joining the UFC, he's been 4-5. Bit of a streak win-loss guy. Not necessarily win-loss, but he'll win a couple and then proceed to lose his next few. But his style, he is an absolutely massive flyweight. He's got really great length and he uses it well, but he does have a relatively low output and kind of lacks the speed of a flyweight. Along with being massive for the weight class, his longer legs do leave him pretty susceptible to takedowns. His opponent, Jesus Aguilar, some notes on him. He was a former UWC champion, went 8-1 on the regional scene, goes on the Contender Series, gets a round 1 sub. Since joining the UFC, he's been 4-2. One of his losses is to Tetsuro Tairo, though. His style, he's a small, compact grappler, has an impressive guillotine, but on the feet, he's very aggressive and reckless. He kind of just blitzes in and hopes that he lands, but he's really looking to take the fight to the ground and go to work there. My prediction for this fight, we got Jesus Aguilar winning this by second round submission. I'm not very confident in this. This is a really 50-50 fight, but despite Sumo Derje is going to look huge in comparison. It's going to look like somebody in a different weight class when these two guys are right next to each other. But I just don't think he's able to keep him at bay. I think Aguilar is able to blitz in, maybe land a couple of shots, but regardless, is able to find a takedown and then start to work from there. Aguilar money line at plus 205, I think is pretty good, even if you don't think he's going to win. Plus 205 for what I think is a pretty 50-50 fight isn't bad value. But outside of that, it's really 50-50. Kind of stay away from betting on this one. But yeah, I think Aguilar is able to get it done. Round 2 submission. All right, next up, we got Cody Durden versus Niam Jargal Tumen Demirel. Yep, I got that one. Come on. Cody Durden, some notes on him. He's got good UFC experience. He's been in the promotion since 2020 after a decent regional scene run, but since then he's been on a tough stretch, losing 6 of his last 7 with some losses to Joshua Vanna and Jose Ochoa in there. His style, he's a pretty crisp striker. He's got good speed in his hands. I think he's got the speed advantage in this one for sure. Good footwork. He was a good high school wrestler, and the announcers seem to never fail to mention that every single fight he's in. So, yeah, he was a good high school wrestler. I hope you guys know that. But his grappling tends to be very average in every single fight that he ends up getting in every single grappling exchange you go, oh, that was very average. But he does keep good pressure. Where I think he gets in trouble is his pace and chin tend to fail him as the fight progresses. His opponent, Tumen Demirel, he was an undefeated fighter on the regional scene in Mongolia, goes on road to the UFC, gets a UFC contract, loses his UFC debut, goes back to the road to the UFC, gets another win. Since then, he's been really inactive, but his style, he's a lengthy striker, very good distance management, very accurate. And grappling wise, he's really crafty. He's able to scramble. He can find this. He has submission skill for sure. Just a very crafty guy in kind of both standing and on the ground. My prediction, I think Tumen Demirel gets it done by knockout in the second round. Tumen Demirel to win this one at minus 140 is some of, in my opinion, the best value on the card. I doubt Cody Durden is able to finish it early. And like I said, as the fight progresses, I think that's when we see Tumen Dembrell kind of take over. Maybe land a takedown and find a submission. But I think he keeps it standing. He's able to outland him, find a big shot. I can see it going either way, really, but I do think Tumen Dembrell gets it done either way. Him by finish, KO, or submission is plus 135 as well, which is pretty good value there. All right, next up on the card, we got Ricky Turcios versus Alberto Montez. Notes on Ricky Turcios. He went on a big win streak in Fury FC, becoming a champion over there. Loses on the Dana White Contender Series, then goes on the Ultimate Fighter show. He actually won the show, but since then he's been 1-3 in the UFC. He has beaten absolutely nobody of even moderate skill. His style is just a very average fighter. He's okay everywhere the fight goes, but not overly skilled in really any aspect of his game. I'd say he uses his leg reach the best. Like that's kind of what stood out to me, but he's just never a very dangerous guy. 6-7% of his wins coming by decision. So not a dangerous finisher and not very overly skilled in any aspect of his game. But Alberto Montez's opponent, he went 9-1 on the regional scene, got a second round submission on Dana White Contender Series, is making his UFC debut, and he's got a 70% finishing rate throughout his career. His style, he's a technical striker with very good submission skills, especially the Anaconda. I think he's got 3 or 4 Anaconda choke wins throughout his career, but he slowed down visibly after round 1 of the Contender Series, and that might have just been, I think we see that a lot with guys because they go so all out trying to get that finish in round 1 on the Contender Series to make it more impressive, and then they end up kind of gassing out. But he did look visibly more tired after round 1 on the Contender Series, and he hasn't seen round 3 in a very, very long time. So the cardio is definitely a question there. But my prediction for the fight, I think Montez gets it done by unanimous decision. I wasn't crazy about Montez or any of the stuff that I saw, but I definitely liked him a lot more. There was a lot more to like than there was with Turcios. I think Turcios is a very, very dirt average fighter, below average fighter, I guess. I think the fight to go the distance at minus 150 is maybe the best bet on the entire card. Montez money line at minus 185, and then sub decision also at minus 135. I think Turcios can maybe fight through and win round 3, but Montez definitely takes care of him round 1 and round 2 and is able to eke out a decision win. All right, next up we have the most heavyweight middleweight fight of all time. Dante Johnson versus Cody Brundage. Dante Johnson, the notes on him. He has a football background before transitioning to MMA. On the Contender Series, got a KO win, smurfing at heavyweight. I'm not kidding. He's a 5'8 middleweight that fought a 6'2 heavyweight and knocked him out in the first round. It was unbelievable. But anyways, he's undefeated. He's got 100% finishing rate. His style, he's a brute striker with just savage KO ability. He showed off his ability to grapple in his last fight, and I don't know if it was his second round that he's ever seen, but made it to the second round and was able to find a submission win. Did not look like he slowed down at all. Answered at least a partial question about cardio. So, at least he's got some gas in the second round. But he's just very powerful and compact. He's a smaller guy for the division, so he's able to just kind of muscle through things. His opponent, Cody Brundage, he was undefeated on the regional scene, became a champion over there, loses on the Contender Series, somehow gets a UFC contract, and since then he's been 5-8. He also fought on the UFC 300 main card against Bo Nickel for some reason. I don't know why, but his style, he's got decent power in his hands. That's kind of allowed him to stay in the UFC for as long as he has been because he's a pretty bad fighter, but he'll occasionally get lucky and land a right overhand or something like that, and it buys another fight in the UFC. So that's kind of been the story on Brundage. My prediction for this fight, I got Johnson getting it done by round 1 knockout. I actually saw, I think this is the most bet on prop on the entire card is Johnson by round 1 knockout. So, I think the fight to end in a knockout is a great bet because regardless of what happens, if Brundage does land that, random right overhand that he seems to find every now and then, you still hit on the bet. But under 1.5 total rounds makes a lot of sense. Dante Johnson, even in the last fight that went into the second round, wasn't very long in the second round. So I think under 1.5 total rounds at minus 180 makes sense. And then Brundage KO at a plus 1200. I don't think it's going to happen, but at plus 1200, to be fair, you never think they're going to happen. And that's why he's been able to stay in the UFC. You never think they're going to happen. So maybe that is a high value straight. But yeah, Johnson gets a round 1 knockout, and then maybe we see him kind of take off at middleweight because he is a pretty good prospect. So yeah, I think he gets it done by round one knockout. All right, next up we got Cody Garbrandt versus Zhao Long. Some notes on Cody Garbrandt: he had the shortest prime in UFC history. Beats Dominic Cruz, then loses, and then fights for the belt against TJ Dillashaw, where he lost twice, getting knocked out both times. And since then, he's been 3-5. He's really struggled to put some stuff together. His style, he's a very, very, very quick and elusive striker. He thrives on blitzes and counter strikings, and he will stunt on you. There are times, I mean, there's times when it's like, Cody, do you care about finishing the like? He'll knock somebody down, and then instead of you know trying to achieve mount or maybe just add any follow up shots, he's up there doing this shit, and it's like he he went on to lose the fight. He did that in, but anyways, what gets him in trouble is he just doesn't have the chin to kind of back up his reckless style and his blitzes. His opponent Zhao Long, he had a massive run on the regional scene. He had over 20 fights. Loses on the Contender Series, goes on road to UFC, then loses the road to the UFC in the final round. Since then, he's been 1-1 in his last two in the UFC so far. His style, he's an above average striker. He wants to engage in scraps. He has very good volume, good pace. He has grappling skill. He just doesn't really look to initiate it. He's got good takedown defense, but his last fight he did not look the same. He looked very timid. Like I said, typically he's a high volume, wants to engage in scraps, but last fight he looked a little bit timid. My prediction, I've actually got Garbrandt getting this done by second round. This is going to be a fun fight. This is going to be a fun fight. I think Garbrandt gets it done by second round knockout. I just think it's a better stylistic matchup for Cody just because he's going to be able to use his speed, enter, and I think, like I said, find the knockout in the second round. I think if the fight goes past the second round and we see a third round, then look out for Long because I think that's where he'll be able to thrive. But either way, I don't see it going the distance. So I think fight not to go the distance at plus 110 is a good bet. Garbrandt at plus 120, I think, is also a pretty good bet. And then the fight to end in a KO because I think Cody will find it early, and then if he doesn't, then Long is able to get it done. And even if it's not late and it is early, Cody's shown that he does not have a great chin. So I think the fight to end in a KO, and yeah, Garbrandt money line at plus 120. These are good, all fairly decent bets at what I think should be pretty good value. And regardless, it's going to be a fun fight. So I'm looking forward to it. All right, kicking off the main card, we got Gregory Rodriguez versus Bruno Ferreira. Gregory Rodriguez, notes on him. He became a champion on the regional scene, loses on the Contender Series, goes to LFA, becomes a champion over there, and then gets a UFC contract. Since joining the UFC, he's been 9-3, with one of his losses already being to Bruno Ferreira. But he's on a very good streak lately, just beating Roman Kopylov and then knocking out Jack Hermanson pretty brutally at UFC 317. His style, he's an absolute unit that will turn off the lights if he lands cleanly. I mean, he is huge for the division, but he wants to pressure you, but then also use his reach to manage distance and pick his shots. He's a pretty conventional striker, so nothing crazy there, but just, a lot of, like I said, conventional combos and things like that. His opponent, Bruno Ferreira, he's an undefeated fighter from the regional scene, 100% finishing rate, gets a knockout win on the Contender Series, joins the UFC, 6-2 here, getting finished in actually both of his losses. So I don't think he's ever seen a decision before. His style, he's a stocky and explosive guy with true one-punch KO ability, and you'll know that because that's exactly what happened in his first fight with Gregor Rodriguez. He looked like he was kind of losing, and then towards the end of the first round, he clipped Rodriguez with a huge shot and was able to finish him. He wants to keep the fight standing, but he is comfortable on the ground and can pull out submissions. I think he's got like 4 or 5 submission wins in his career, maybe even more, but that ability is there. Despite wanting to keep the fight standing for the majority, he does have comfort on the ground, is able to find submissions. My prediction for this one, I think RoboCop gets it done, but I think it is by decision, which is crazy because I when this fight was announced, and I was thinking about it originally, it was somebody is getting slimed out. It's gotta be because Fajeda is such a powerful puncher. Rodriguez, we've seen how nasty his KOs can be, but then I kind of remembered Rodriguez's last fight with Kopylov, and I think it goes a lot like that fight. I don't think Rodriguez lets him close the distance the way that he wants. I think even if he has him in dangerous positions, he's not going to blitz forward because of what happened last fight. So I think Rodriguez just kind of picks his shots well and out point strikes him for the victory. I think if Fajeda does win, that he's going to knock him out. So I think the under on significant strikes there is there because I don't think he's going to land, and if he does, it's going to be a nasty blow. Over 1.5 total rounds at -115 makes a lot of sense, and the fight to go the distance at +300. I think that's a really good for a high value strike. I think that can be there because nobody's really expecting this fight to go the distance, but for some reason in my head, I just think it kind of ends up being not a boring fight because I think there will be exciting moments in there, but I think Rodriguez plays this one a lot smarter and is able to manage distance and just like I said, kind of out point strike Feta in this one. All right, next up, a fight that was at a kind of short notice. A little bit of an unction in this one. Two pretty older fighters. Drew Dober, the notes on him. Like I said, an experienced guy. He'll be entering his 26th fight in the UFC. He's lost 4 of his last 6, gotten finished 3 times, but he just seems like a chiller. I don't know. I wasn't very familiar with him, despite him being a pretty big veteran. But a lot of the promo that he's done over the course of the past week has been pretty cool. He just seems like a cool dude. He's also got that like Giga Chad looking face and jaw. But his style, he's a pretty technical striker. He just kind of lacks the ability to be dynamic, pretty conventional, but he does have the power and the urgency to finish when he smells blood in the water. His opponent, Michael Johnson, once again, another experienced UFC veteran, except he's got wins over Dustin Poirier, Edson Barbosa, Tony Ferguson. This guy's been around, and he has these impressive wins. He kind of looked like he was on his way out there for a little bit, but then he's strung together 3 pretty nice wins and has proved, Unk still got it. His style, despite being 39, he does have pretty good speed in his hands still, and he throws good combos. It's just been the inconsistency, I think, that's plagued his career. Like I said, he has wins over Poirier and Tony Ferguson, but then he'll turn around and lose somebody that he shouldn't. But my prediction for the fight, I got Johnson winning by second round knockout. I'm kind of bought in right now to the Michael Johnson run. I'm not, bought into maybe what he thinks. I'm not saying he's going to go on some sort of title run here, but I'm kind of bought in for right now. I think he's strung together some really nice stuff. Zell Hewer win maybe doesn't look as good as it did in the past, but I think he's able to get it done by knockout in the second round. He's got a pretty big reach advantage and a speed advantage, so I think he's able to find the finish. Later in the fight. I think it goes over 1.5 rounds, and I think Michael Johnson at -120 makes sense. So looking forward to it. The unction, as I said earlier, but yeah, we'll see. I got Johnson by second round knockout. All right, the feature fight on the card: Raul Rosas Jr. versus Rob Font. Notes on Rob Font: he was a big regional scene fighter, becoming a champion in CES before joining the UFC back in 2014. He's been 12-8 in the UFC, but has only really lost to guys that are clearly better than him. He's been definitely a bit of a top 15 gatekeeper for the division. His style, he used to be this finishing machine, but he kind of seems to have lost, maybe not lost his danger, but hasn't looked as dangerous, recently. He just wants to march forward, kind of hunt his opponents down, throws good combos, but he does kind of lack defensive grappling. I think we've seen that in his last couple of fights. Raul Rosas Jr., the notes on him. He is the Chewy Wee. He's that guy. He's the Chewy Wees guy. And I think that's kind of what he's been known for. But on top of that, he's also the youngest fighter in UFC history. He got a win on the Contender Series at just 17 years old. And he's been 5-1 in the UFC so far. He's won 4 in a row. His style, he's a relentless control grappler that will find submissions and occasionally I think he has one ground and pound win, but his striking was definitely the weak point in his game. But over the past 4 years, he's massively evolved that. This is a huge step up in competition for sure. I don't want to say none of the guys that he's fought have been UFC level, but definitely nobody even close to the level of Rob Font. And like I said, Rob Font is kind of a gatekeeper, but and he will lose to guys that are clearly better than him. But if you are not clearly better than him, he will make that known. With that being said, my prediction: I've got Raul Rosas Jr. winning this one by unanimous decision. I think the fight to go the distance at -190 is good, and we'll get into the bets. I think this one might be a better one to live bet on because I think early on we will find out how much trouble Rosas Jr. is in. If after, because I think he will land a takedown, but it is how well is Rob Font able to explode and scramble out of that takedown. If he's able to do it fairly easily, I think Rosas Jr. could be in some serious trouble. But if not, I see it going like how most of Raul Rosas Jr. fight goes, where he just kind of is able to keep him there, control him, look for submissions, maybe find one, maybe not, but end up winning on points. So I think he gets it done by unanimous decision. Fight to go the distance at minus 190 makes a lot of sense. But then also, Rob Font has guillotine wins, and Raul Rosas Jr. Does leave his neck open at times. So Font to win by submission at plus 3,000. Once again, it's another thing that I'm not saying it's going to happen, and I'm not saying I'm confident in it happening, but the odds at plus 3,000 seem just a little odd to me. So Chiwiwis gets it done, unanimous decision. We'll see. This is a 50-50 fight, a huge step up for Raul Rosas Jr., and I'm excited to see what happens. All right, the co-main event of the evening, Caio Bahaio versus Reinier de Ritter. Caio Bahaio, the notes on him, he's a Fighting Nerds member. He went 10-1 on the regional scene, goes on the Contender Series, gets a win. He was 7-0 in the UFC. His one loss comes from his most recent fight with Nasruddin Imavov, kind of getting outstruck to a decision. His style, he's got a very typical Fighting Nerd style. He's very clean, very technical on the feet. And then on the ground, he's got a sneaky good ground game. He has the ability to scramble, control. He has good takedown defense. He's no slouch. He is pretty comfortable everywhere the fight goes and a pretty good overall well-rounded fighter. His opponent, Reinier de Ritter, he was a longtime champion, won FC, comes into the UFC on an absolute roll, knocks out Bo Nickel, who had a ton of hype, killed all the hype of Bo Nickel, and then everything just kind of comes to a screeching halt in his most recent fight against Brendan Allen. His style, he's a very lengthy and awkward fighter with just incredible submission ability. I think that's kind of where he got in trouble, though, a little bit in his last fight. He was looking for too many submissions off his back, but historically, he has great submission ability. There is a lot of questions about his cardio and a lot of questions about his heart. I mean, he straight up quit in that Brendan Allen fight after round 4. He claims, he tried to fight too much, but it just looked like he was getting dominated and then gave up, and Kaio's somebody that has great cardio and is able to push a great pace over 3 rounds. And even outside of the Brendan Allen fight, look at the round 5 of the Robert Whitaker fight, and even round 4, Reinier de Ritter was slowed down tremendously. With that being said, my prediction, I think Bahaio gets it done by unanimous decision. I think the fight to go the distance makes a lot of sense. I don't see anyone getting finished here. Bahaio at minus 275 and over on significant strikes. I just think Caio takes care of business. He's not going to be somebody that gives himself up easily on the ground, and he's just somebody that I think is going to is going to force a much better pace. And I don't think DeRitter's going to be able to keep up. I'm not saying DeRitter's just going to straight up quit, but maybe he's able to find a takedown early, maybe win round 1. But I just think Caio takes care of business, is able to outstrike him, and who knows at this point what the state of the middleweight division is going to look like and what's next for him. But yeah, I think he's going to take care of business, get it done. Unanimous decision. The main event, Charles Oliveira versus Max Holloway. I am so unbelievably excited. I've been thinking about this, not even just this week, but last week. I mean, this is the best fight that has been made all year long up to this point. Could end up being maybe the best fight of the year. These are two absolute legends, but the notes on Charles Oliveira. Charles, where do I even start? Where do you even start breaking down Charles Oliveira? He's got the most finishes in UFC history. He's a huge fan favorite, and he's, I guess you could say, a bit of a win-loss streak so far. But his losses are coming to Ilya Topuria, Islam Makhachev, and arguably Arman Tsarukyan, somebody that he took to a split decision, and a lot of people thought that he won that fight. But his style, he is the greatest BJJ practitioner in the history of the sport, the greatest submission artist that the UFC has ever seen. On the feet, he is a complete fighter, but he just kind of walks forward with that high guard, throws clean shots, and he's got super underrated power. They asked Justin Gaethje, who hit you the hardest? And he said, Charles Oliveira. That's a guy who's fought Max Holloway and Dustin Poirier, and a lot of these guys. And his answer was still Charles. So He can be a bit reckless on the feet, however. He is hittable. We saw it against Taporia. We've seen it in the past. He gets clipped before, but that's just kind of the nature of Charles. That's who he is to a T. His opponent, Max Holloway, he is a UFC legend. He's another fan favorite that's only ever, once again, he's only really ever lost to the elite of the elite. Lost to Volk 3 times. Um, he's moving up from featherweight, and I think he's having good success. He's really looked like he's grown into the weight class. He's found success against Justin Gaethje. He had to go back to fight Ilya, then moves back up, but he does look like he's found success in this weight class, and he's kind of found his stride. Oh God, I'm getting like even like breaking it down. Oh my gosh, you guys, I am like so excited for this. But anyways, his style, he's the best boxer in UFC, baby. If you've ever seen that clip, he's just kind of piecing up somebody looking the other way. I think it's Calvin Cater, but clean, fast, precise, and does not stop. He has excellent pace and cardio and will push it through all 5 rounds if he needs to. But he is the best striker maybe of all time. And that's where he looks to keep the fight, and that's where he wants to win. My prediction, I've got Charles Oliveira by submission in round 2. Now, there's a lot that goes into this. This is not just because, Charles is my favorite fighter, but I just look, I do think Charles is not going to be as nearly as helpless on the feet as people think. If he's able to engage in exchanges, I think he at 155 has the power advantage. And Max Holloway has an incredible chin, and he's really only ever been knocked down or knocked out by Ilya Taporia. But Charles also has great power, and even outside of Max's strength, the striking on the ground, I looking through Max's entire career, I think the best grappler he's ever faced is Brian Ortega or maybe Volk. And Max does a great job of scrambling and getting to his feet, but against Charles, somebody that's so unique in his entries and is able to find these takedowns in certain ways and is able to attack the back in a way that we have never seen it at any level or any weight class in the sport. I don't see how Max is able to keep it standing and just outstrike him for 5 rounds. Now, I do think part of me does worry that Charles. There's a lot here, so I'm kind of going on, but part of me is kind of worried that Charles is getting into like BMF mindset and he's maybe not going to try and grapple, which I think it would be a poor choice. But I do think that if the longer the fight goes, the more it will favor Max Holloway. I think he obviously is going to push a much better pace, and we saw Charles get clipped late, in the second Chandler fight too. So the longer it goes, if it goes to a decision, I'd favor Max. But betting wise, not to go the distance at minus 260 makes a lot of sense. We've seen Charles practicing the Max Holloway point down. Oliveira sub at plus 350 makes a lot of sense. And then a last minute finish. If you guys can get a last minute finish in, the odds might be skewed because the odds makers know it's a Max Holloway fight, but a last minute finish. If this fight somehow goes all 24 minutes and 50 seconds and we get, a point down, oh, I will be extremely scared, but I'm going. I mean, there's videos of Charles practicing this. I don't want to lose any credibility, but I don't think that a point down will go the way that a lot of people think. But yeah, Charles Oliveira by second round submission. I think he gets it done. Probably defends his BMF belt against BSD, and then probably looks for a title shot after that. And then Max Holloway, if he's able to win, I think the winner regardless is defending against BSD. But this is a great fight. This is a great fight. I'm super excited for it. You guys should be too. All right, thanks for sticking to the end. If you guys watch the whole video, or if you guys just wanted to fast forward to see the betting recap, that's good. You're more than welcome to do that. But on the screen to the left is the are they high value straights? I kind of explained this in the last video, but these are just things that I think have great value for what is being advertised on the odds. So things like a Rob Font sub and a Cody Brundage KO are not necessarily things that I think are going to happen, but are possible outcomes, in my opinion, that have super great odds. Rodriguez fight to go the distance is not something that a lot of people are thinking about at plus 300. I think it's got a pretty decent chance of happening. Aguilar money line at plus 205 is a pretty good underdog. So just everything over there could be something to throw maybe $2 or $3 on just to see. And then everything on the right are things that I'm fairly confident in that can be combined. I didn't make parlays this time. I just kind of threw everything in the, on the legs to see, what you guys can throw together. I usually try and stick to like two, three, maybe four legs, but yeah, overall pretty confident in everything on the right. Let me know what you guys place, what you guys got, how well you do. I can see this being a card where I kind of look back and go, what the hell was I thinking? I can also see it being one where I was like, man, that was a crafty pick right there. But it'll probably be somewhere in between. Uh, yeah, let me know. Text me if you're not one of my friends. Comment if you are one of my friends, which is a much greater possibility. Text me. Let me know, what you guys think. I got a little mic, so I've been talking into that, and hopefully, um, you know, that works out well, and the video kind of maybe starts to be a little bit better. I'm definitely gonna post a recap on Sunday, and then I think I'm gonna post a non-recap breakdown video in the midweek, like Wednesday or something like that. So look out for that. That should be pretty fun. I'm having fun doing this. Um, you know, they're not super high production or anything like that, but you know, I like doing it. So yeah, let me know what you guys have. Let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you guys after the card for the breakdown to see how well I did. See ya.